Alright, probably the main antagonist ride line is here for the Paragalactic Clash, that being the Gabwelius Fantôme, which in many ways I still find it weird that it's a Dark State ride line instead of being nationless, and technically it's a cursed version of Rezael, so let's begin. Here's the starter, Aspirin Draco Kid, which you do not have to run, but run it for the theme. And then we go to the Grade 1 Wiki Power Fruition Dragon, which has a skill auto when rolled upon by Attainment Dragon in the Grade 2, cost and rest 3 to search your deck for 1 Crimson Moon card and put it to your hand, of course shuffle your deck. So unlike most of the other ride lines where you could also search for your key piece, this one literally just only does Crimson Moon cards, in which the second skill is just your typical original ride line where count rearguard during your turn. If you're at least Grade 3 Vanguard Gabwelius plus 2k, you could pretty much ignore this, but then again there is soul abilities in Dark State, so you might end up using it, but obviously here for the ride line. In which we go to the Grade 2 attacking power Attainment Dragon, which has a skill auto when rolled upon by at least a Grade 3 Gabwelius, look at top 3 cards of deck to choose up to 1 card from among them to put to hand, 1 goes to drop and the other goes to the bottom deck. Typical ride line that just sets you up, and putting to the drop is going to be very important as Gab is basically cursed Rezael, so it actually does call from the drop zone. In which the second skill is count rearguard during your turn. If your Vanguard is at least a Grade 3 Gabwelius plus 5k, you could pretty much ignore this unless if you actually need to call it, but once again just use it for the ride deck. And now it's time for your miracles to be vanquished with the Grade 3 with 13k power with the Demonic Lord Dragon Gabwelius Fantôme, which has a skill auto Vanguard when this card attacks, cost counterblast 1, put 2 of your rearguard to soul to choose up to 2 Grade 3 or less from the drop zone and call them to rearguard in the same column, and then at the end of turn put those called units to soul. Similar to Rezael calling from the drop zone for some multi-attack, except that it's only for your 1 column, so meaning you can only get 4 attacks, and putting the rearguards to soul actually can trigger some abilities as this is Dark State we're talking about, and for this deck's case, soul blasting them back out as well. In which the second skill is the Fantôme skill, act Vanguard once per turn, bind a Crimson Moon card from your hand, soul, or drop, and then perform all the following. So the first part is that you get this skill if your bind zone has 1 Crimson Moon card, all your front row units with 5k power, but you have at least 3 plus 10k instead. And then until the end of your opponent's next turn, when your opponent will drive check the next critical trigger, choose one of its trigger's abilities to nullify. So it's either the power or the crit. And this nullify can only be used once, since it's the next critical trigger that your opponent activates. And then also, at the beginning of your next turn, your at least Grade 3 Vanguard Gabwelius gets the trigger effects that you nullified through the Fantôme ability during the next turn. So basically, throughout the Fantôme skill, if you nullify the critical trigger and you nullify the crit, you get the crit. If you nullify the power, you get the power. And I have to say, this is a pretty unique way to basically counter Rezael, and it's basically a curse Rezael because you're nullifying the triggers when Rezael is known for getting your triggers. And in many ways, it could actually change on how your opponent can interact with you. 1, a critical trigger while you're at 4 damage doesn't kill you, or 2, when you need to guard, you could change your guard pattern into basically 1 to pass to nullify the power instead. Although, just remember, your opponent only runs 8 crits for most games, which is half the trigger lineup, but it does actually change the way how your opponent can interact with you. So I definitely love this part where it actually nullifies your opponent's trigger in a similar way to Brandt, although you also gain the trigger abilities as well, which essentially in a way is a curse Rezael, stealing your opponent's power instead of using your own with a miracle. And also resurrect stuff from the drop zone just like Rezael, although this relates more to Gabwelius' lore. But do keep in mind, since it does rely on your opponent doing a trigger check, especially since the crit, it is a hit or miss. And now to the support. So first off, here's the discard fodder for Crimson Moon, and then we go to Devotion Dragon, which is Grade 2 attacking power, and the skill is auto when put to soul from rearguard by the at least Grade 3 Vanguard Gabwelius, choose one of your units against the Swaggy power in turn, where your bind zone has at least 2 Crimson Moon cards, choose 2 units instead. This card can be nice to power up your board even further, but I say you have better stuff to run than this. And then we go to Febrile Dragon, which is a Grade 3 with 13 power, and the skill is act drop. If your Vanguard is at least a Grade 3 Gabwelius, and you don't have a copy of this on rearguard, cost soul blast 2 to call this to rearguard. Just saying this now, you don't really use soul, and just wasting the soul for this is actually pretty nice, especially to put those cards back to the drop. In which the second skill is auto rearguard when this card attacks, if your Vanguard is at least a Grade 3 Gabwelius plus 5k power in any battle, so basically a big beater that can resurrect itself. Why not? And then we go to Poisonous Breath Dragon, which is a Grade 1 with power, and the skill is auto when placed on rearguard during the main phase. If you have at least a Grade 3 Vanguard Gab, cost soul blast 1, look at top cards of your deck to choose up to 1 Grade 3 or less card from window and put it to the drop, and this card gives us 2k power in turn. This is very helpful for Gab because as you can tell, Gab can superior call stuff from the drop zone, and you also have drop zone abilities that can superior call as well, so that's another plus. On top of the part where Soul Blasting 1 could actually fill up your drop as well. With the second skill, Auto, when put to Soul from rear guard through the ability of Gab, cost bind this card to draw a card. This is very helpful just for some extra draw power, even though you do not put this back to the drop zone, which is a little unfortunate, but it's there when you need it. And finally, to our last card for Gab, Reverend Dagger Dragon, which has a similar skill to the grade 3 where act drop. If your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Gabwelius and you don't have a copy of it in the drop zone, cost Energy Blast 3 to call this to rear guard. So instead of Soul Blasting 2, you Energy Blast 3, which is actually a bigger deal as this whole entire deck so far doesn't really use energy. Which the second skill is Auto rear guard once per turn when this card attacks. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Gab, cost Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets us 5k power in turn. But your bind zone has at least 2 Crimson Moon cards plus 10k instead. So just like similar to the grade 3, it's a card that can call itself and become a big beater, except this one actually has a cost. It does depend on personal preference on how you built the deck, but the part where you superior call this using energy instead of soul is actually much better than using soul to superior call, just so you could save soul for other skills. And now for the new Varga card, starting off with Crouching Axe Dragon, which is a grade 1 with your power in the skills. Auto rear guard, when this card boosts its attack hits the Vanguard, choose a grade 3 Varga from your right deck and reveal it, and if either that or your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Varga, look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 Mythisch card, reveal it and put to your hand, of course shuffle your deck, and if you put to hand, you put this to soul, needing to attack hit just to search for one specific card for Varga. And on top of that, there's a possibility that this is going to end up getting retired anyway. Don't bother. And now to the final Mythisch at the moment, which is the Dragon Empire Mythish, the Mythisch of Unparalleled Dragnia, which is a grade 2 attacking power in the skills. Auto, when placed on rear guard from hand, cost Soul Blast 1, look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 Varga from among them, reveal it and put in your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Nice that it costs Soul Blast instead of Counter Blast, as the deck really needs Counter Blast, although a bit unfortunate you don't get anything bonus if you actually fail. In which the second skill is Count. If your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Varga, it gets all the following. Count rear guard during your turn, this unit gets us 5k power, and if all other rear guards in the same column is a different name from this unit gets the boost ability and cannot be retired by your own abilities. This is definitely really nice because it could be a booster that just cannot be retired, especially since Varga literally nukes everything, and it does actually change the pattern of how you can put your triggers. And also for the fact that this could be used as a 15k booster essentially. With the second skill, Auto rear guard, once per turn, when your Vanguard is stood by battle, this unit gets plus 5k power, and if you do not have another copy in the same column as this unit, and you play the Divine skill during the fight, cost Energy Blast 3, change its crit to 2 into the end turn. Too bad if you get a crit beforehand and you gave it to this, unfortunately, setting the crit to 2 will actually make it lose its crit. And the restand power buff can only consistently be gained once per turn. It's only a 5k power buff with this skill, but if you do Divine skill plus 10k, although on top of the other skill where it also gives another 5k, on Divine skill turn it could potentially get 15k with a crit of 2, but on regular turns it's just going to be 10k. But overall, a nice new card for Varga since it's another card that cannot be retired through Varga's ability, and it's also very nice that it can be used as a huge booster. On top of the helpfulness of being able to search for Varga from the top 7, which could be into your evil dragon. And then finally, here are the reprints of Crimson Moon, which I'm glad that they're reprinting this, even though it's one set later. And here are the secret rares, including the previous Phantom units that we actually got revealed, instead of being revealed on their actual reveal. And then next week we got a mystery card, which I'm just going to say it's going to be a Mythisch of 0 because it looks like Suo's returning. And so that's it for the new Gabwelius Phantom ride line along with the Dragon Empire Mythish. What do you guys think of it? The Dragon Empire Mythish for Varga is definitely very helpful for the deck. Just wish that the deck actually got counter charge as well. Although the search is actually pretty nice just for Soul Blast because there are ways to search, but it does cost counter blast and you really do not want to use counter blast for the deck. So just using it for Soul instead is pretty nice. And it's another card that just cannot die from Varga, which is also very helpful. In which we go to the Gabwelius Phantom stuff, which is actually pretty awesome. Once again, a cover card being revealed early, which I expect a surprise at the end. And it's kind of a cursed Rezael that I've been kind of hoping for a very long time, and it was kind of meme for a long time. And I think this is going to be the closest thing that we're going to get from it, as Gab is essentially the miracle worker, and now he's become a cursed unit instead. And I just love its unique mechanic of basically nullifying triggers, even though Brandt did that first, but also stealing it. So pretty awesome, even though the deck isn't completely unique. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.